Right now, your competitor's product is worse than yours, but their price is higher, and they're beating you. I'm not saying this as a conspiracy theory. I'm saying it as a deliberate architecture built by the world's most profitable companies.
And the name of that architecture won't leave your head after this video. The sales equation. It's not written in arithmetic. It's written in psychology.
When Apple took the iPad on stage in 2010, they didn't change the product. They didn't change the price. They just placed a number next to it. Sales hit 5 times what analysts had projected. Williams-Sonoma put a second bread maker next to the first one, didn't touch the price of either, and sales of the first machine doubled. The Economist added a third subscription package that they knew almost no one would buy, and premium subscriptions shot up dramatically. 3 different companies, 3 different industries, but the game being played at the table is exactly the same. The winner isn't the one who makes the best product. It's the one who sets the right comparison in the customer's mind. By the time this video ends, 3 things will have shifted. You'll see how consumer decisions take shape long before any price analysis, in a moment you never even touched. You'll walk through all 3 cases, mechanism by mechanism, step by step, and you'll never look at your own pricing proposals, sales presentations, or product packages the same way again.
If this kind of analysis is useful to you, the like button directly determines how many decision makers this channel reaches. If you're not subscribed, now's the time.
Welcome to the Insight Atlas. Let me play devil's advocate right out of the gate. Think like a sales director or a CMO. Your product or service is solid. Your pricing is competitive with the market. All your digital channels are live. Your customer reviews are positive. If you manage these variables correctly, your sales should grow. Is that framework wrong?
It's not wrong, but it's dangerously incomplete. Every one of those variables is a necessary condition. They all reinforce each other, and none of them is sufficient on its own, because they all miss one critical factor: how the consumer brain actually makes decisions. That process has a very limited relationship with logical analysis, feature price comparisons, or rational evaluation.
So you're going to tell me emotions matter. We already know that.
No, I'm talking about something far more specific. Neuromarketing researcher A.K. Pradeep tracked consumer decisions using EEG and eye tracking technology, and the findings are striking. The vast majority of purchasing decisions take shape before conscious evaluation, before logic enters the picture, before features are read, before prices are compared, before the competitor is placed side by side. The brain has already generated an emotional pre-orientation. Somewhere deep down, a feeling forms. I love this, or this is exactly what I was looking for. Think of it as a pre-filter. Any product that doesn't pass through that filter doesn't receive a fair evaluation, regardless of how objectively superior it is.
So what trips that filter? What makes it open?
A reference point. Consumers never evaluate anything in absolute terms. Everything is perceived in comparison to something else. Is this expensive or cheap? Valuable or ordinary? A smart choice or a risky one? The brain needs a starting point to answer those questions. And here's where the critical split happens. That reference point is either set by you, by your competitor, or by some arbitrary number the customer already has in their head. The brain craves completion, and the gap is never left empty. The only question is who fills it.
Honestly, that sounds a little overstated, even a bit far-fetched. Professional B2B procurement specialists, experienced executives, are they really making decisions based on some arbitrary reference point? That's exactly what everyone thinks, and that's precisely why this mechanism is so powerful, because even the most experienced, most rational decision makers can't escape the effect. In a moment, we'll look at an experiment that proves this. But first, let's name the mechanism. Anchoring. Identified by Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman in 1974, validated across dozens of industries and dozens of cultures. One more thing I have to ask. Can a customer who's aware of this mechanism neutralize its effect? Surely a conscious buyer doesn't fall into this trap, right?
If only. But the research says the opposite. Knowing about the mechanism reduces its effect, but doesn't eliminate it, because the system in the brain was built for speed, not for the information complexity of modern markets, and it still takes the shortcut. And that reveals something critically important for both buyers and sellers. The real battlefield isn't product quality, it's perception architecture.
Here's how Kahneman and Tversky set up their 1974 experiment. In front of participants, they spin a wheel of fortune. The wheel is rigged to land on either 10 or 65, completely at random. Then they ask a completely unrelated question. What percentage of UN member countries are located in Africa? Participants who saw the wheel land on 10 guessed an average of 25%. Participants who saw it land on 65 guessed an average of 45%. Same question, a completely irrelevant random number, but it doubled their estimates.
The number on the wheel is completely meaningless. They know that. And it still affects them?
They know it's meaningless, and they still can't stop it. Kahneman said this himself in his Nobel Prize lecture. Knowing a cognitive bias fully, including its mechanism, does not completely protect you from its effect. The brain still takes the shortcut, because this system was built for speed, not for the complexity of modern markets.
You framed this earlier as even experienced buyers are affected. Is there actual data on that?
There is, and it's pretty sobering. They showed experienced real estate agents the same house, but gave different groups different listing prices. The agents, professionally, said the listing price won't influence my assessment. They genuinely believed they were making independent evaluations. But in reality, the group that saw the higher listing price appraised the property significantly higher. Over a decade of professional experience didn't cancel the anchor's effect.
When I heard that result, something clicked for me immediately. Just the other day, I was reviewing a software proposal, and the moment I saw the competitor's price, I thought, okay, this one seems reasonable, but why was the competitor's price my reference point at all?
Exactly. And that's why this mechanism is so powerful. Whether we're aware of it or not, no price evaluation can happen without a reference point. The brain needs something to hold on to. The only question is, who's placing that anchor?
Does this mechanism hit harder or softer in B2B sales? We generally think of corporate buyers as more analytical, more data-driven.
Actually, the reverse is true. In B2B, in high-ticket, complex sales, anchoring is dramatically more powerful. The reason is simple. The less a buyer knows about a product's true value and the fewer reference points they have, the harder they lock on to the first number they see. Enterprise software, consulting services, custom manufacturing equipment, in none of these categories does the customer arrive with a clear price expectation. When you deliver the first proposal, that proposal becomes the anchor. The entire negotiation that follows is shaped around it.
So does going first in a negotiation give you an advantage or put you at a disadvantage?
That's a full conversation on its own, and it's the subject of our next video. But for today, going first means you set the reference point. Do it deliberately, and it's an advantage. Do it carelessly, and it's a liability. Now, let's look at a company that did it masterfully.
Actually, the reverse is true. In B2B, in high-ticket, complex sales, anchoring is dramatically more powerful. The reason is simple. The less a buyer knows about a product's true value and the fewer reference points they have, the harder they lock on to the first number they see. Enterprise software, consulting services, custom manufacturing equipment, in none of these categories does the customer arrive with a clear price expectation. When you deliver the first proposal, that proposal becomes the anchor. The entire negotiation that follows is shaped around it.
So does going first in a negotiation give you an advantage or put you at a disadvantage?
That's a full conversation on its own, and it's the subject of our next video. But for today, going first means you set the reference point. Do it deliberately, and it's an advantage. Do it carelessly, and it's a liability. Now, let's look at a company that did it masterfully.
January 27th, 2010. San Francisco, Moscone Center. Steve Jobs is introducing the iPad to the world, a 91-minute presentation. And at minute 75, Jobs asks, "What should we price this at?" He doesn't give the answer immediately. Instead, he says, "If you listen to the pundits, they'll tell us we should price this below $1,000. That typically means $9.99.
As he finishes that sentence, $9.99 appears on screen, large, bold, unmistakable. And Jobs lets it sit there.
For about a minute, he talks about the iPad's mission, about cost targets, about wanting to get it into as many hands as possible. But he's not really saying anything new. He's simply engraving $9.99 into the room's collective memory. Then comes the line, "I'm thrilled to announce that iPad pricing starts not at $9.99, but at just $4.99.
And the room erupts because everyone feels like they just saved $500.
But here's what's so striking. Nobody in that room actually knew what an iPad was worth. This was an entirely new product category. It could have been $200. It could have been $800. No one in the audience had a reference point to compare against. Jobs created that reference point from scratch in 60 seconds. Then he shattered it. And the audience wasn't asking, is $4.99 worth it anymore? They were saying, I just saved $500.
So people weren't buying the product. They were buying a feeling. I made a smart decision.
Exactly. The decision wasn't rational. It was emotionally driven and then rationalized. That distinction is critical in consumer psychology. We construct our justifications after the fact, but the actual decision was made by an emotional frame.
But do the numbers actually back this strategy? Jobs was a great speaker, a great showman. Maybe iPad sold because it was just a great product.
In its first year, iPad sold somewhere between 3 and 5 times what most analysts had forecast. Over 15 million units. And here's the important detail. That massive range of predictions tells you how genuinely uncertain the industry was about how this product would be priced and received. Which means how Jobs presented the pricing mattered at least as much as the product itself, maybe more.
And Apple never limited this to just one product.
Never. At WWDC 2019, when Apple launched the Pro Display XDR, a category they had no existing product in, they put Sony's professional reference monitor on stage first, $43,000. Then they announced their own, $4,999. Expensive on its own, but next to $43,000, it almost felt like a reasonable buy. Same mechanism, different product. A decade later, same effect.
I'll grant you Apple. But Apple has that brand gravity, that Jobs mystique. Someone's going to say they're just different. What do you say to that?
For them, the next case study. This mechanism isn't Apple specific. It works just as precisely with a product that has zero brand recognition, sitting in any catalog in any city in America. And honestly, that case might be even more interesting.
Early 1990s, Williams-Sonoma, the American kitchen and home goods retailer, they introduce a new product in their catalog, a bread maker. Price, $275. For that era, that's a serious price tag. And it's a brand new category. Plenty of American consumers asking, what do I even need this for? Am I really going to bake my own bread? Ads run, it makes the catalog. But sales land well below projections.
Classic scenario. What's the instinctive corporate response?
Lower the price, launch a big promotion, revise the product, or pull it from the lineup and replace it with something else. Williams-Sonoma did none of those things. Instead, they added something new to the catalog, a second bread maker. This one was slightly larger, had a few more features, but at its core, it did the same thing in the same product category. Price, $429.
And the $429 machine almost never sold.
Almost never. A few enthusiasts picked it up, that's it. But here's what happened. Sales of the $275 bread maker nearly doubled.
The product didn't change. The price didn't change. The advertising didn't change.
The only thing that changed? The comparison point in the customer's brain. $275 no longer floats in a vacuum. It sits next to $429. And in that comparison, $275 feels cheaper, smarter, and safer. The brain stops asking, is $275 worth it? And starts asking, if they both do the same basic thing, doesn't it make more sense to get the $275 one over the $429? The entire decision frame shifted.
When I heard this, something clicked immediately. This is the decoy effect, right? Adding a third option to make the second one look more attractive?
Exactly. And the same mechanism runs just as powerfully in digital subscription pricing. The Economist's pricing structure from a few years back illustrates this beautifully. Two options: digital only at $59, print plus digital bundle at $125. A lot of readers chose digital. It was cheaper and covered most content. Then a third option was added: print only at $125. Rationally, this option makes no sense. Why would you pay the same price for print only when you can get both for the same amount? But the moment that irrational option entered the catalog, bundle subscriptions shot up dramatically.
Because now you're getting two things for $125. One of them feels free.
And that perception turns the $125 bundle into the smart choice. The third option has exactly one job: provide a reference point, so the customer makes a value judgment rather than a cost calculation.
Apple, Williams-Sonoma, The Economist. All three share something. The product didn't change. The price didn't change. What changed was the information presented to the customer. Only the context changed.
And whoever controls that context controls the perception and controls the sale. For anyone who thinks this matters less in B2B, here's a concrete example. A consulting firm presents 3 packages. The base package is $5,000. The premium is $15,000. The gap feels enormous and customers gravitate toward the base. Now add a corporate package at $22,000. Almost nobody buys it. But its very existence makes the $15,000 premium package feel like picking the middle, the safe, reasonable choice. That's the compromise effect.
So by presenting 3 options, you dramatically increase the probability of the second option being chosen.
Anchoring, the decoy effect, the compromise effect. Under all 3, the same fundamental mechanism. The brain doesn't evaluate absolute values. It evaluates relative ones. What you're compared against determines how valuable you appear. Now, let's add one more layer on top of this, because anchoring is powerful on its own. But when it combines with another force from behavioral economics, it reaches its full potential.
1979. Kahneman and Tversky's paper in Econometrica, Prospect Theory, one of the most cited academic papers in economic history. The core finding? People experience the pain of a loss at roughly twice the psychological intensity as the pleasure of an equivalent gain. Losing $100 carries about twice the psychological weight of gaining $100.
How does that connect to sales?
Think about the sales language your company is using right now. It probably runs something like this: buy this product and you'll gain X. Use this software and your efficiency improves. Subscribe to this service and you'll save time. All of that is gain language. And gain language only speaks to the weaker half of the brain. The far more powerful other half, that's triggered by loss framing.
Make that concrete. What does it look like in practice?
Say you're selling enterprise cybersecurity software. Right now, your message is protect your data with this solution. Gain language. Now, let's rewrite the same product through a loss frame. According to IBM's 2024 Cost of a Data Breach report, the average breach in the US costs $4.88 million. Without this solution, you're exposed to that risk right now. Same product, same price. But the second message pulls from the brain's threat response mechanism. And that mechanism is twice as powerful as the reward mechanism.
Hearing this, I'm realizing something about myself. Last month, I put together a software proposal. I wrote everything in "here's what you'll gain" language. Looking back now, the entire proposal was framed around gains. I never mentioned what they'd lose by not acting.
And that's extremely common. Most sales materials default to gain language automatically because there's this instinct that says, don't make the customer feel negative. But that instinct misses a critical nuance. Surfacing the loss isn't about making customers feel bad. It's about making the real cost of inaction visible.
So is the loss frame always superior? Is it always better to talk about loss?
No, and this distinction is critical. Do you know when loss framing is most powerful? When the customer is stationary, uncertain, sitting in the status quo. In that state, the fear of loss is a mobilizer. But if the customer is already actively searching, if they've already made the decision to change, then gain framing becomes more effective. Because at that point, they're looking for a vision, not a threat. The rule: show the stationary customer the loss and get them moving. Show the active customer the gain, and position your message based on where that customer sits in their buying journey.
Most companies use one message and send it to every customer at every stage.
And that's a measurable loss.
especially in B2B. On a buying committee, the CFO's motivation is different from the CMO's, which is different from the procurement director's. The CFO wants to see the cost of inaction, loss frame. The CMO wants to see the growth scenario, gain frame. Presenting the same pitch deck to everyone is nearly equivalent to presenting to no one. Right frame, right person, right moment.
How do you actually execute on that? Do you rewrite every sales material for every person?
Largely, yes. But it's not as daunting as it sounds, because the core content stays the same, only the opening sentence and emphasis shift. For the CFO, companies that don't use this solution face an average cost of X. For the CMO, companies that use this solution achieved this growth rate. Same product, same price, but you're entering through a different door. And that door determines who in the room actually makes the decision.
Hold on. Let's take a step back and distill the through line of everything we've covered. Look at the Apple iPad case. The product didn't change. Look at the Williams-Sonoma case. The product didn't change. Look at loss framing. The product didn't change. In every single case, the only thing that changed was the context presented to the customer's brain.
And that context shows up as millions of dollars of difference on company income statements. McKinsey's pricing research is clear on this. Companies that integrate behavioral economics principles into their pricing strategy achieve on average 2 to 7% higher gross margins compared to companies that do standard price optimization. That sounds small, but on $100 million in revenue, that's $2 to $7 million in additional income without lowering the price by a cent, without spending $1 more on marketing. And that is the real sales equation.
When I hear that number, the obvious question is, if this is so powerful, why isn't everyone doing it? If these mechanisms are known, why aren't my competitors using them?
2 reasons. First, most companies know these mechanisms exist, but they don't apply them as a systematic strategy. There's a massive gap between we do this sometimes and we architect every customer touchpoint deliberately around this. Second, the vast majority are so locked into price competition that they treat framing as secondary. The thinking goes, let's get the price right first, then fix the message. But that sequence is completely backward. Framing is the foundation of pricing, not a layer on top of it.
And here's where the classic corporate reflex really needs to be challenged. When sales dip, what does most leadership do?
Cut the price, increase the ad budget, add features. None of those moves solves a framing problem. Worse, a price cut can actively make things worse because price is itself a signal. A lower price communicates cheap, and cheap creates a new reference point, this time working against you. Customers start asking, why is this so low? Is there something wrong with it? That's why price competition is a dangerous game. It may generate volume short term, but long term, it erodes both brand perception and margins simultaneously.
So the most expensive move might be lowering the price.
Precisely. You're paying twice. You compress margin now, and you degrade brand equity for the long run. 2 losses, 1 decision. Whereas if you spent that same energy on framing, resetting your reference point, recalibrating your messaging, redesigning your proposal architecture, you protect the margin and make the customer see the higher price as the rational choice.
So what do you actually do with this? 3 concrete steps. And I'll say this up front, you don't need a large budget or a new platform to implement them. Most of the time, you're reconfiguring materials you already have.
Step 1, run a framing audit. Go through all your existing sales materials and run them against 2 questions. First, is this message framed around gain or around loss prevention? Second, which stage of the buying journey does this message target, stationary or active? You don't need to rewrite everything from scratch. Usually you only need to change the opening sentence and the emphasis. But that change produces measurable differences in conversion rates. I got so many thoughts on what happened this week.
One thing to watch out for in that audit, how you define who is stationary. Misdiagnosing that puts you in the wrong frame entirely.
Absolutely right. Stationary customers typically signal this. They visit your site and leave. They request a proposal and go quiet. They show up to the first call but not the second. These are interested but not yet ready signals. At this stage, the loss frame is the mobilizer. If you don't address this, here's the risk you're carrying. Active customers, the ones comparing you to competitors, asking detailed questions, requesting references, at that stage, the gain frame is more powerful. Here's what you'll get by choosing us. And the audit isn't a one-time task. Markets shift, buyer profiles evolve, the framing needs to evolve with them. Step 2, anchor your reference point deliberately. Customers never make decisions in a vacuum. They always compare. If you don't set the comparison point, your competitor will, or the arbitrary number in the customer's head will. Either way, you've lost control. 3 approaches. 1, explicitly surface a strong competitor's price. But be careful. Don't compare against a weak competitor. You want to position yourself in the same league as the strongest names. 2, add a premium tier to your offering, just like Williams-Sonoma did. 3, do what Jobs did. Vocalize the expectation you know exists in the customer's mind, then shatter it. Whichever approach fits your context, always set the reference point yourself. Never leave it empty.
There's a trap to watch here. Most companies build their proposal structures on the logic of the more options, the better. But too many options create decision paralysis.
Exactly. This is called the paradox of choice in psychology literature. As the number of options grows, the decision becomes harder and satisfaction drops. So when building your reference point architecture, keep the tiers to 3: entry, mid, premium, and design the premium tier deliberately to make the mid tier feel like the compelling choice. The mid tier is your real target. The premium tier is your anchor.
When you anchor correctly, price negotiations are reframed before they even begin. The customer stops questioning absolute value and starts evaluating relative value, and you control where you stand in that relative comparison.
Step 3, A/B test your framing. Most companies run A/B tests on design changes or price variations. The real leverage is in message framing. Same product, same price, same target audience. 2 different frames. Which one drives higher click-through? Which one closes faster? Which one produces lower drop-off rates?
And do you need major tech investment to do this?
Not at all. The simplest version, take the same email and send it to half your list with a gain-framed subject line and to the other half with a loss-framed subject line. Compare open rates and click-through rates. After a month, the data will tell you which direction to move. Email subject lines, landing page headlines, the first slide of your sales presentation, all of it is testable. Over time, you build a data-driven framing strategy, not based on instinct, based on evidence.
Let's close the loop. In this video, we looked at 3 real cases. In the Apple iPad launch, the product didn't change. The reference point changed, and sales hit somewhere between 3 and 5 times what analysts predicted. In the Williams-Sonoma bread maker, the product didn't change. A comparison point was added, and sales doubled. In loss framing, the product didn't change. The direction of the message changed, and both decision speed and close rate transformed.
By the time this video ends, 3 things should be locked in. 1, consumer decisions are largely shaped before conscious analysis begins, shaped by a reference point and an emotional frame. 2, whoever controls that frame controls perception and controls the sale. 3, doing this doesn't require changing your product, your price, or your budget. Redesigning the message and the context is enough. According to McKinsey's data, that's worth 2 to 7% higher gross margin, 0 additional budget. That is the real sales equation.
Now, we want something concrete from you. Take a look at your own company's sales materials, your website, your last proposal, the first slide of your sales deck. How many of them are built in gain language? Who's setting your reference point? You, your competitor, or some arbitrary number in the customer's head? Share that honestly in the comments. We want to work through real cases and real questions.
If this video added value to you, the like button directly determines how many decision makers this channel reaches. Subscribe and you won't miss what's coming. Both are free, both compound.
And if you want to see how these mechanisms play out deeper in the customer's mind, we have 2 videos that speak directly to this one. First, the messy, non-linear journey a customer takes on the way to a purchase decision. The messy middle. Why it's not the one who spends the most on ads who wins, but the one who shows up with the right message at the right moment. Link is below.
Second takes the opposite angle from what we discussed today. Instead of lowering the price, what happens when you make access harder and drive value to the top? The scarcity paradox. Why Hermes doesn't have an add to cart button despite a $40,000 price tag? That one's below too. Both videos, right alongside this one, complete the picture.
Take care of yourselves and your brands. See you next time.